The most striking truth about value dilution is that you don't lose your standards because you stop caring. You lose them because you start understanding too much. We all like to think our boundaries are these fixed, concrete walls. But in reality, especially in high-pressure situations, your own empathy, your own patience, can be used to slowly dissolve the very lines you promised yourself you'd never, ever cross. So why does being open-minded sometimes end with you accepting things that would have absolutely horrified you a year ago? Well, that's the core paradox of value dilution, isn't it? It's that exact moment your capacity for compassion gets turned into the mechanism of your own moral erasure. Okay, let's dive into this complex and, frankly, really subtle process.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to start by looking at the understanding trap itself. Then we'll get into the slow erosion of our standards and break down the specific 3-step mechanism of dilution. After that, we'll cover the psychology of surrender, why this works so well. And then the important part, we'll talk about reclaiming your anchors and drawing your line of sovereignty.
Now, before we really get into the weeds here, I want to frame this correctly. What we're talking about are observable patterns, things people report experiencing. This isn't about diagnosing anyone's intent or judging their character. Think of it more as an exploration of how our own brains can be, well, gently nudged into thinking that settling for less is some kind of personal growth. And this is really the question at the heart of it all. It's that nagging feeling, right? That feeling that in your effort to be flexible, to be patient, to be understanding, you've somehow misplaced a core piece of who you are. The lines you drew in the sand, they've been washed away. And not by some giant tidal wave, but by this slow, persistent tide of little exceptions and accommodations. So how does this actually happen? I mean, it's not like it's an overnight thing. It's a slow erosion. It's this gradual shift from having these objective, rock-solid standards to a state of situational tolerance, where what's acceptable completely changes based on the pressure of the moment. So let's look at the key concepts that make this whole thing possible. First up is what's called incremental normalization. This is a cognitive shift that's been documented time and time again. Think about those predatory corporate hustle cultures where working an 80-hour week suddenly becomes the norm, or maybe in some intense social groups where loyalty is everything. In these kinds of systems, one person can slowly re-anchor what the entire group sees as normal, just one small, unacceptable step at a time. And that leads you right into the relativity trap. This is such a powerful mental trick. You stop asking the simple question, is this behavior okay? And you start asking, well, is it as bad as last time? I mean, it could be worse, right? This constant re-anchoring makes every compromise feel like a win and makes dysfunction feel like a reasonable price you have to pay just to keep the peace, which of course leads directly to moral fatigue. Just imagine for a second that your willpower is a muscle. Every single time you have to defend a boundary, every time you have to push back against one of those small compromises, that muscle gets a little more tired. Eventually, you're just so exhausted from fighting 1,000 tiny battles that surrender, well, it starts to feel like relief. Your brain literally starts lowering the bar just to get a moment of peace. So the long-term result of this whole process is that your focus completely shifts. Instead of seeing a clear line between what's true and what's not, you've been conditioned to look for nuance in everything. This is called ethical fading. And the problem is that nuance almost always serves someone else's agenda. You might even start to feel guilty for having standards at all, turning your own values into a source of shame. This really shows the core transformation, right? You go from active integrity, where you're standing up for what you believe in, to passive erosion, where you find yourself shrinking, making yourself smaller just to fit into a dysfunctional system. The dilution isn't one big choice. It's the crushing weight of 1,000 tiny exceptions that have caged your conscience. Okay, so now we get the underlying ideas, but how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, there's a systematic, almost predictable 3-step pattern that's used to manage and redirect a person's own internal reasoning. Let's break it down. Okay, so it all starts with step 1, the exception frame. A request is made for just a one-time bypass of your rules, and it's usually for a very understandable, special reason. And because you want to be a good, compassionate person, you agree. You might even feel proud of yourself for being so understanding. But that little exception just opened the door for step 2, normalization. That one-time thing happens again and again, until that exception quietly becomes the new unspoken expectation. And then comes the knockout punch. Step 3, the moral inversion. This is the big psychological flip. See, your brain is fundamentally wired to seek social harmony, to avoid conflict. So, when standing up for your standards starts creating friction, your brain starts to identify your standards as the source of the problem.
You start thinking things like, well, if I just wasn't so demanding, or if I was just a little more flexible, things wouldn't be so tense. Their behavior is what's actually causing the problem, but you're the one who ends up erasing yourself to fix it. And the devastating result of this entire cycle is something called identity atrophy. Your very sense of self just starts to wear away. People in these situations often report a total loss of confidence, and it's because their brain has been fundamentally rewired to associate having standards with conflict and diluting those standards with love or loyalty. You literally forget how to even have boundaries because the habit of having them has been trained right out of you. I mean, this all sounds pretty terrible, so why does it work so well on so many smart, caring people? Well, the answer is in the underlying psychology, these conflicting motivations that are powering this whole engine of delusion. So on one side, you have the controller's motivation, which is often a drive for what you could call total behavior permissiveness. Basically, the goal is to create a world where they can do whatever they want with zero consequences. And on the other side, you've got the target's vulnerability, a deep human need for affiliation. This is when someone is conditioned to value staying together more than being respected, which makes them totally susceptible to prioritizing harmony over everything else. And underneath all of this is a really simple biological shortcut, cognitive ease. Our brains are designed to save energy. Making a moral judgment, holding a boundary, and then dealing with the conflict that comes from that takes a lot of mental energy. It's often just biologically easier to dilute a standard than it is to defend it. In the short term, surrender just takes less work. So here's the crucial part. How do you stop this? How do you get back what you've lost? This is where we shift from just analyzing the problem to taking action. We're moving into the tools for awareness and sovereignty. This is all about putting that bar back up. Awareness starts with asking yourself one really deep personal question. It's a tool you can call the Time-Machine Audit. Just imagine going back in time and meeting the version of yourself from 5 years ago. Would that person be proud of the standards you hold today? Or would they be shocked? So the point of the Time-Machine Audit is to be brutally honest with yourself about whether what you've been calling growth or maturity is actually a slow process of self-erasure. Then step 2 is to develop fixed anchor awareness. This just means you have to consciously check your current normal against the views of trusted people who are outside of that high-pressure dynamic. They can be your objective baseline, reminding you that what you call flexibility might actually be a learned response to manufactured friction. Look, reclaiming your sovereignty starts by giving yourself permission. This phrase right here is an incredibly powerful affirmation. It interrupts the whole cycle. It pushes back hard against that moral inversion that's been telling you your standards are the problem. You are absolutely allowed to be unreasonable when you're defending the core of who you are. This isn't about being difficult. It's about finally recognizing that your values are non-negotiable. And that brings us to our final and honestly our most important takeaway here. This whole process of value dilution teaches us that the most dangerous walls aren't the ones that other people tear down, they're the ones we dissolve ourselves, piece by tiny piece, all in the name of understanding. And this brings us to a huge distinction. Understanding is a skill. It's an amazing tool for empathy and connection. But your standards are a survival requirement. They're the foundation of your identity, your self-respect, your safety. One is a tool you can choose to use. The other is the very ground you stand on. Don't confuse You can absolutely understand why someone acts the way they do. You can have empathy for their struggles, for their history, for their pain, but that understanding does not obligate you to participate in it. Your mind is your own sovereign territory. If you can remember that, you'll make sure that nobody else's convenience ever becomes a cage for your character. It's time to put the bar back up.